In this video, we're going to discuss whether or not a Lotus Elise is a good first car. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the first in the series of videos that will be answering your questions that you left in my Ask Me Anything Call for Questions video. This question comes from Angela in Australia. 1. What is the public reaction like? How does this car handle hills and bumps? If a teenage girl is getting a Lotus Elise as her first car, is that an absolutely stupid decision? Lotus has always been my dream car and I've been a fan since childhood. I'm seriously thinking about getting a Lotus Elise as my first car. I want to drive this car daily, to my uni, shopping, hanging out, etc. Would this car be suitable? I do have a Mercedes ML63 if I want to carry more stuff or people, so that's not something to worry about. So Angela, this is a great question. I really love this question and I'm so glad that you asked it. When I was thinking about getting my own Lotus Elise, I checked around and watched a lot of YouTube videos and was reading articles and that sort of thing, but I think I was too afraid to reach out and ask an owner a question, so I'm really glad that you did. What is the public reaction like? That's sort of an interesting question. Here in the United States, the Lotus Elise is a really uncommon car, so people gravitate towards it constantly. Anywhere I go, people stop me and want to talk about the car and look at the car. Just about everyone on the road stares at the car. People stay in my blind spot so that they can sort of check out the car from the rear. So here it gets a lot of attention. Now the Elise is probably a bit more common in Australia, but just the same, I think that these are cars that get a lot of attention. I think there's really no way of getting around that, so it's something that it really goes with the territory of owning an Elise. I think this will vary depending on which version of the Elise that you buy. The S1 is probably the least aggressive looking, least noticed by people who don't know what it is. If people are Lotus enthusiasts, they will definitely notice it. And the S2 and the S3, which are both pretty aggressive looking, and it's like driving around a Ferrari or maybe a Lamborghini. I mean, people just notice them like crazy. As far as the car on hills and bumps, there's really no issue driving up or down hills. The car is very low, so you have to be careful with your approach angle going up or going down. But aside from that, going up and down hills is really not too much of an issue. Same thing with bumps. I don't know if you're talking about speed bumps or road bumps or just roads in bad condition. Since the car is low, you will learn sort of approach angles that you can take the car over them without scraping the car. As far as roads that are just in bad shape or potholes, these are things that you learn to avoid, and it doesn't take too long to learn to avoid them. You're sitting so much lower than you are in a normal car that you see the road in sort of a different way. It's almost like the way a squirrel might see it. And so you're down very low on the ground. You kind of experience the road in a very different way. You feel everything and you see everything right up close and personal with it. Your last question, if a teenage girl is getting a Lotus Elise as her first car, is this absolutely a stupid decision? So I've been thinking about what you said you wanted to use the car for. The Lotus Elise for anyone, generally speaking, is a difficult car to have as your primary vehicle for A to B transportation. Aside from the fact that the car is extreme to drive, it's a very fragile car, and so you always sort of have to have a plan about where to park the car and making sure that you park it in a place where people aren't going to back into it, aren't going to hit it from the side. On the road itself, it's smaller than most other cars, and so you have to really be watching out for other drivers all the time, kind of assume that they don't see you and learn to place the car so that people don't hit you. You sort of learn the blind spots of other people's cars and make sure not to put your car there. So it's a challenging car for anyone, I think even experienced drivers, to drive on the street. It's a challenging car to live with as far as just your primary vehicle because it's small, it doesn't have a lot of storage space, it's very low to the ground. It's nothing like your Mercedes, it's a race car. So all the pros and cons of driving a race car every single day pop up. But all of that said, all of this comes down to what you are comfortable with personally, and I don't think anyone can make this decision for you. It's definitely a driver's car, and I think usually people that drive it are people who have a bit more driving experience than you would as a first-time driver, but that isn't to say that it wouldn't work for you, and that isn't to say that you can't learn. I think people love to tell young people and young drivers what to do, and I think that is especially true with young women, and especially men telling young women what to do and how they should lead their lives. And so I'm not going to do that. I would just say that the advice that I would give anyone else would be to try to drive one and live with one for a day or two. If you can get a test drive on one, or find someone who has one, or if you can hire one somewhere, and really, take the car for a weekend and really drive around and try to use it and take it to the places that you would need to be using it with daily once you own one. I think so. That means taking it to uni. That means taking it to your friends' places, and that means just driving around your, the sort of the areas and neighborhoods that you would be using the car most of the time, and see how it performs and see how you like driving it. The fact that you have a Mercedes ML63 to use when you need something bigger than the Lotus is great. But that's it. If I were a young person and I was in a financial situation where a Lotus Elise as my first car was possible, I would have jumped on it immediately. And I think most people watching this video, I think most people in general, if they had a chance to own an Elise, even if it was at a young age, even if it were at an age that most people would say is not a good idea, they would do it. It's just not usually a financial reality for a lot of people who are younger. So if it is for you, I would say try it out, and if you think you can live with it, go ahead and try it. The worst that can happen is what can happen to anyone else. You can have an accident, or somebody can back into it and hit it, and it'll need to be repaired, but that can happen no matter how old you are. And you'll find out pretty quickly whether or not it's something that will fit into your life right now. And if it doesn't fit into your life right now, if you were to buy one that's, say, a few years old, these cars hold on to their value extremely well. And so it's pretty unlikely that you would lose much money if you decided that, I need to sell the car for now because it doesn't really fit my life. But in a few years, when you're out of school and living on your own, if the financials make sense, then you can get one again. They're not going anywhere. It doesn't say how old you are here, but I'm imagining if it's your first car and you're going to uni that you're around 18, 19 years old. I think that would be amazing to have a Lotus as a teenager. Kind of crazy, but we never know what life is going to bring. If it's feasible for you, then just why the hell not? Bad things can happen, but bad things happen all the time. None of us are ever more than a breath away from oblivion. The Elise is a challenging car to drive. I think it's a challenging car to learn on, but positives from that are that it will demand your attention all the time. And for a new driver, that's actually a really great thing, to always be paying attention. You can't really drive this car if you are intoxicated or inebriated, so that's good too. It's just very difficult to handle in those situations. So yeah, you'll have to pay a lot of attention. The car is a challenge, but it's not a challenge that you can't learn and be successful with. As a younger person, it'll be easier for you to get in and out of the car, and the thing is, you'll have so much fun with it that I think it's that how do you replace that? I can't imagine what you could replace being a young teenage person and having an awesome sports car would be like. You're going to have a lot of great fun and hopefully some great adventures. And so, if it's a challenge, if it's a pain, which it could be, you just have to weigh that and decide if it's something that you want to put up with, and you'll know pretty quickly. It could be that while you're in school, you really just want to focus on your studies and not have to be always kind of worrying about a car. That's sort of the one challenging aspect of something like an Elise. You don't have to worry about where you park it. I think you definitely need a parking space where you can keep the car most of the time and count on that. But why not? Just go for it. So this is probably not the answer you're expecting or anybody else would advise. But I would say let it be about you and just do as much research as you can. Really try to drive one. I spend some time with one before making that decision, since it is a bit of a challenge as a first car. And, sometimes the automotive space is not all that welcoming to women. So I think it's really awesome that this is something that you're looking to do. And I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. So I really, think about all of these things and do your homework like you already are, and then make that decision. And so these are all sort of the considerations that I would have for someone who's thinking about a Lotus Elise as a first car. They're the same considerations that I have as using the car myself. They're the same considerations I would tell anyone who's thinking about buying one at all. There are a few extra considerations for someone who's new to driving, but I hope that you will keep us up to date if you decide to purchase an Elise, and let us know what your experiences are like using one every day. And if you try one out and decide that it's not for you, I'd love to hear what about the car made you decide that it might be best to hold off until you're out of school. Thank you so much for the question. I love this question. That's why I released this video first. If you've had a Lotus Elise as your first car, or some kind of other sports car as your first car that people would typically say, don't do it, it's crazy, please leave a note in the comments below us. and thanks for watching.